What's up, ladies and gents? Good to see you again. This is going to be yet another video here on the Videocast YouTube channel. This is going to be a review of, as I said last time, not Happy Birthday to Me. Turns out, I decided to watch the first movie that is in this set chronologically, When a Stranger Calls, which you can call a slasher movie, or you can call it a serial killer movie, or you can call it something else. But right now, I'm going to call it a slasher film, or at least review it in the Summer of Slash series. Yes, that's right. I'm opening up the Summer of Slash series with When a Stranger Calls. So, first off, let's get down to the early business of When a Stranger Calls. So, 1978, Halloween comes out, starts small, and then becomes an absolute nationwide phenomenon. And, of course, Hollywood, being as they are, they really want to cash in on this crap. So, Halloween spawns a whole lot of imitators. And, you know, Halloween's not the first slasher film. For me, I've said this before, the first slasher film for me is 1974's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, coupled with 1974's Black Christmas. Both of them sort of show both sides of the slasher coin. The backwoods and the it's in your home kind of thing. So, you've got that going for you. But Halloween steps it up a notch. It really gives slasher movies the tropes. Slasher movies were synthesized into the perfect tropes that were in Halloween. So Halloween is the blueprint from thenceforth of what a slasher movie should be. So, here's the thing. There were lots of imitators to come out. One that I can mention right now that I've actually got right in front of me, and you know what, I guess I'll go ahead and just pull it right off the shelf because it's here, is Tourist Trap, yet another slasher film. Not quite the Halloween type of formula, but still trying to capitalize on that, you know, killer stalking teenagers thing. Sort of the same thing with When a Stranger Calls. The thing about it is that Halloween's imitators in the late 70s that came out right after Halloween, not often did they imitate Halloween 100%, which is probably what they should have done. Friday the 13th, for instance, does the same thing as Halloween, but in a slightly different, amped up kind of gory way. Pictures like When a Stranger Calls don't quite do the exact same thing. When a Stranger Calls is more the idea of a killer stalking a teenage girl. So that's how this film opens. You have the great Carol Kane showing up for the first 20 minutes as a babysitter, being stalked in this house that she's babysitting for by a serial killer. She receives calls from this serial killer telling her to check the children. Turns out that he has murdered the children and has been upstairs the entire time calling her from a different phone. Now, obvious plot holes aside, this is a fantastic sequence. This first 20 minutes of this movie, it's fantastic. Great cinematography. Fantastic acting, especially by Carol Kane. Great music. The set design is wonderful. The writing is good. The dialogue is good. The characters are good. It's a really, really good first 20 minutes. And possibly one of the best first 20 minutes of any horror film ever. Certainly any film that could be considered even loosely a slasher, which, you know, whether you call When a Stranger Calls a slasher or not, that's sort of, you know, debatable. I'm certainly not one of the people who would technically call it a slasher, but I wanted to open up Summer of Slash with it, just because it illustrates what happened after Halloween came out. Lots of movies come and imitate it, but not to the full degree that would be happening in the early 80s. But yes, When a Stranger Calls, fantastic first 20 minutes, scary as heck, and just tense as can be. The problem with When a Stranger Calls is that right after this first 20 minutes, and after a couple of, couple extra scenes that sort of add to that story, it sort of goes off in a totally different direction. What could have become a slasher movie, a straight-up slasher movie, or perhaps even a serial killer movie, becomes more of a police procedural. A chase movie, perhaps, is what you would call it. Because Charles Durning, who plays sort of, I guess what you could call the main character in here, is searching around for this serial killer who escapes later, and sort of just walks around aimlessly, doing nothing really all that wrong, but he's being chased anyway. And the thing is, this is a good opportunity to make you try to feel for the serial killer. Several movies have done this before and since, but When a Stranger Calls doesn't do it. Really, it just shows a killer wandering around aimlessly, doing pretty much nothing for probably an hour. More than an hour. And then so it's sort of weird because you have the killer as sort of a main character, but he doesn't speak very much. Most of his emotional and psychological conflict is thin at best, slightly disturbing at certain times, and then just totally unnecessary in others. And then you have Charles Durning. Actually, I think the strongest performance in the movie, next to Carol Kane, but we'll get to her later. Charles Durning is, an ex-cop who's going as a private eye, and he's hired by the family whose children were murdered by the serial killer to bring him back in after he's escaped. He decides to try and kill him, effectively pretty much becoming a killer himself. And this is also sort of problematic because it's not really shown his the degradation and the de-evolution of his psyche. Not shown at all. So what was a slasher film in the beginning becomes a police procedural, which could have become a psychological thriller, or a serial killer movie, or a Hitchcockian thriller, and just doesn't. It starts off in several different directions and never completes the 180 turn that it needs to take. And that's not to say that all of it is bad. There's a lot of fantastic night scenes that really basically do nothing and go nowhere and don't really advance the plot much. Sort of, I guess. I don't know. But they're really well shot. Fantastic night scenes, just from a lighting perspective and from a cinematography perspective. The neon lights, a blaze of purple coming down on characters, revealing shots, fantastic stuff there. All the cinematography is pretty good, and most of the acting is very good. It's just that most of the scenes don't really go anywhere. I think that the movie just continually tries to go in different directions and doesn't complete those turns. It's just strange. And then in the last 20 minutes, it's pretty much a return to the first 20. So what I sort of imagine is that this could have been a good 40 to 50, maybe an hour long short film that could have been fantastic. But the full-length movie isn't quite standing up to what the first 20 minutes was. There's a middle section that's just not working hardly at all. Acting's fantastic and everything, but still, most of the writing just doesn't work. Scenes that go nowhere, stuff like that. And then the last 20 minutes, as I said, goes back to the beginning and has Carol Kane return in sort of a total 180 turn, the only 180 turn that it really makes, and does successfully. And she's fantastic, of course. She's the best lead in the movie, considering there's 3 to 4 leads, depending on the way that you look at it. But the best lead in the movie, she's really good in it. Her acting's fantastic. Her screams, her hysteria, all this stuff, she does fantastic. And this last 20 minutes is not as harrowing as the first 20, but still sort of is a good ending to the movie. It's a very difficult movie to review because here's the deal. The director made the first 20 minutes as a short film and then refilmed that and then tacked on this middle thing and basically redid the first 20 minutes for the last 20 minutes. It's very difficult to review because one very, very good sequence, 20 minutes. An hour 10 minutes of not a very good middle section. And then the last 20 minutes, fine, pretty good. It's just hard to review. It's a weird movie to try and review. And, you know, to say that I disliked it would be too much. But to say that it's a fantastic movie is also way too much. It's not a film that I think I can see myself rewatching plenty of times. Now, what I can say about it is that this experience of watching it was much better than my last experience. I watched it sort of late at night, and to be quite honest with you, after the first 20 minutes, when you get into this middle section, it's very slow. Not a lot happens. So I pretty much kept falling asleep and wasn't even hardly awake for the last 20 minutes, which is, yet, as I said, pretty good. But, I don't know. It's just not a movie that I can rewatch very often. But rewatching it this time, I did enjoy it a bit more. I had a bit more energy. I was able to appreciate the night scenes and the acting and stuff like that. But it's not a movie you can rewatch very often. I don't think it's anywhere near my favorite horror movies. It's, I don't know, I couldn't even put it in like a top 30. Even for that first 20 minutes, having seen that first 20 minutes, which is fantastic and very harrowing and well written and well directed and has fantastic cinematography and everything like that, even considering all that, I can't rewatch it. Perhaps I should just rewatch the first 20 minutes pretty often and then just quit. I think really this is a movie that could have been cut down to its first 20 minutes, perhaps a different ending tacked onto that 20 minutes, and then throw it into an anthology film. That would have been fantastic, and this would have been probably the best story in that anthology film. But they had to make a full-length film out of it because they wanted to cash in on Halloween. So that's sort of what's going on with When a Stranger Calls. Very strange movie to try and review. Yet again, good acting all the way through. There's not a bad actor in here, I think. Maybe the children occasionally are not that good, and maybe a few side characters are iffy. But for the most part, very, very good lead acting. All the cinematography all the way through is good. All of the dialogue is good. Some of the story just falls totally off after the first 20 minutes. I feel like I'm saying the first 20 minutes a lot in this review, but it's really hard not to do. But yes, When a Stranger Calls is a movie that I have enjoyed watching it the second time but realize that the middle section is basically just crap. The last 20 minutes are okay, and the first 20 minutes, of course, are a masterpiece of horror and a masterpiece of suspense. So that's pretty much what I've got to say about When a Stranger Calls. Good movie, not a great movie, and very strange to start off a series with. I probably should have just gone ahead to Happy Birthday to Me and skipped When a Stranger Calls, but what can you do? But that's going to be my next review, Happy Birthday to Me, which is also on this 2-disc set, which is, well, not 2-disc set, 2-movie set on 1 disc. Yeah, good. When a Stranger Calls is good. Not great. And very hard to review. So maybe 2.5 out of 5 stars? That sound good? Yeah, let's go 2.5 out of 5 stars. So, next movie to be reviewed is Happy Birthday to Me. I'm going to see if I can watch it today, get a review up for you, but if I don't get it up today, I'll see if I can get it up tomorrow. Definitely going to see if I can watch it today, even if it's late night, because I remember loving Happy Birthday to Me quite a bit. Pretty good movie, much better than When a Stranger Calls. But thanks, ladies and gents, for watching, and I hope you go out at some point and watch When a Stranger Calls. It is worth a watch, despite what I've said about it. And yeah, so rock on. If you like, subscribe. Talk to you later. See you next in a Happy Birthday to Me review.